if you consider maybe a bit of an artificial scenario, but if we're doing medical diagnosis, do we really want our model to be trained on data from Reddit, for example? I mean, there's a lot of experts on Reddit, right? And so I think that this is a challenge that we face is ultimately, do we bring our own data? Do we use data that's brought to us? Do we use both? And what's the conflict there? But you also talked a little bit about the different types of data and how they relate and how we have to approach them different. And maybe June, you could talk a little bit about what structured data versus content versus how do we have to think about these things as we bring them to the table, because if everything is data, that's one point, but not every data is in the same structure and can be accessed in the same ways.
Yeah. So I really like the data that I cannot data as a clay. I think as a fundamental material of modern day technology and generative AI or any kind of machine learning algorithm, data is certainly key. But I want to take a step back to say, because we just said like everything is data, I don't want people get sort of concerned like, oh, I have not been doing data like in my organization. I don't have piles and piles of terabytes of petabytes of data, so let's not do AI and wait until. I think because everything is data, there are a variety of different techniques that we can employ to actually make sure that we can turn whatever asset that has been accumulated in any kind of form into actionable sort of AI-ready assets. And then the standard ones is if you have any sort of internal databases, relational databases, anything that is a number like financials or internal systems, website tracking systems, reports, documents, and those are like the most traditional data sources that can be easily processed. And then on top of that, then you have text with a large language model. Text effectively become data. And then any of the instructions that you put it out there, any of the documents in PDF formatting, raw text formatting, internal documentation, your HR employment handbook, and all those are technically data. And then one layer above that, we have images, and one layer above that, we have audios and videos. Depending on the use cases, all of them can be usable. And then one of the things that we should probably pay a little bit more attention to is like, what kind of data solve what kind of problem. So ultimately, depending on what the business problem that we're trying to solve, we can decide what kind of data has become more valuable and what are the processes that we need to design so that we can turn those data into AI-ready assets.
So how do you think we make that determination of like what data is valuable, what's important? If again we have a mountain of data, we have to figure out what's the right stuff. But how do we know what's the right stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think fundamentally, if you know, it depends on I think whether you know the problem. You can know the problem that you want to solve, but you may not know what the answer to it is. And so I think in some cases you have to go through some discovery to try to figure that out. It also takes some help, honestly. People that know the kinds of things that you can do with different models and different approaches to solving those problems, to be able to look at your data to see, do you have this? Is this complete? How confident are you in this data? How often does it change? Who's the custodian of it? Is it well documented? All those kinds of things, all that governance that goes along with that. And if you don't know those things, you're not mature in that, and many businesses aren't. It sometimes takes external eyes, and it takes a little guidance to be able to look at what you have and to see if you can actually solve the problem that you're trying to solve or that you want to solve without trying to bring in some other data from some other sources, whether it's purchased or because there are data sets you may not have thought to collect certain kinds of demographics on your customers. Maybe you can't, but other places can, and so you can get those things and pull them into your system where they're necessary. So I think it's a little bit of both, right? You want to be able to understand what you want to solve, but sometimes it takes some guidance to be able to say, can you actually do that?
Absolutely. I think that's probably one thing that is missing in sort of the older generation of technology adoption or even like finding a vendor to provide a certain service. These days, having someone to sort of hold your hand, or at least some sort of discovery, as you were describing, to find out exactly what you have and what problem we're trying to solve, and then what's the connection point, is really key, because it's actually probably more than what a standard organization's capability to say, oh, I know what kind of result AI can bring in, and here's the things that I need to have in order to do that. And typically that's sort of the start of the chicken and egg problem.